So welcome, everyone. My name is Barbara Milligan. I'm the CEO of the Cape and Islands United Way. And this is Beth Bowman, our Community Impact Officer, a brand new Community Impact Officer. So we are delighted to have her join our staff. And I really appreciate you being here today. I know that you're all busy and you're doing really important work in our community. So thank you for taking the time to come and learn about what we are doing and the process we've been going through, and to really have a discussion about how we can help you and support the work that you're doing. So we have a few goals today in our session. One is to just understand what we've been up to and what it means to be a partner with us. We're going to explain our new results framework and the guiding principles, which are really important that you know what that's about when you're writing a grant. And then Beth is going to explain the new grant process in a little bit of detail. So one of the things to know is that we've been undergoing a lot of changes over the last couple of years. And it's not just because I'm new to the organization, it's because really United Way as a system has been going through changes. So we've done strategic planning in the last 6 months or so. We've changed our mission statement. One of the things I want to draw your attention to is that last piece of the mission statement that says create lasting change. So what our volunteers were seeing in these grant proposals that was a little frustrating is that 75 to 80% of what we were doing year after year after year was short term. And so we're in an environment here on the Cape where nonprofits are proliferating, we're all raising more money than ever, and our problems are growing. So like, what's wrong with that picture? How can we come together as a community of service providers and nonprofits and community members to shift that? So we're really focused on lasting change, which doesn't mean we're not going to support the short-term needs, because obviously the child in school can't learn if he's hungry. So we've got to take care of that. But we're really focused on how do we connect that to a long-term sustainable path. In our vision statement, what I want to point out is this line that says donors, volunteers, and partners, because that is really who we are and what we're about. Our donors are our clients. So your clients are the people that you serve. Our clients are our donors. Without our donors, we couldn't support you. So they're really utmost in our minds about how do we serve the philanthropic interest and the community interest of our donors. Volunteers is a second piece of that. You know, we're focused on volunteerism through Cape Cod Volunteers. So it's not just about our volunteers, it's about your volunteers, it's about inspiring volunteerism. And the third piece is partners, that's you. And when we say partners, we don't just mean the organizations that we fund. We're really looking to develop partnerships with the nonprofit sector to bring our network and resources and leadership to how can we help nonprofits on the Cape as a sector. You know, how can we all be better? So that's an important piece of the direction that we're going. So we're going to talk a little bit about what does it mean to partner with us, what our work is, and where in the heck are we going? So the old United Way model was really what I've heard referred to as spray and play. So you take the funding and you spray it around the community, and then you go and you know, you can see what you're doing, but it's very thinly spread. And what the United Way as a system noticed over the last 10 years is, you know, the donors have changed, and all of you who raise money know this, right? We've changed as donors. Society has changed. Information is available. So we have to adjust to that. And community impact is really a model that's been adopted by many, if not most, United Ways across the country. So what community impact means to us is that we're shifting from whatever work you're doing, write us a grant proposal, and then we'll have a group of volunteers review it, and if they think it's worthy of funding, then we'll fund you. So the model has shifted. I can't use my hands because I'm holding the microphone, but shifted. So now we're working with the community to set goals and priorities based on so we're doing the research, we're studying the needs, we're looking at community indicators. So what are the needs that we can address? Where should we focus our money? What are the collaborations that need to be organized? Where are the gaps? So it's a very different model and process. And part of it is our volunteers were making decisions based on the proposals that were in front of them. So they only know what's in front of them, right? So what we're trying to do now is make it so our volunteers really know what's the context in the community for what's happening. And so we're evaluating what our funding priorities are and where we're investing based on this and not just on what's in front of them at the moment. So it's a different strategy for us. It's much more appealing to our donors because, the old model is good and you know that it was making a difference, but with this model, it's really, we can really report that impact and hopefully move the needle on some of these issues as we work together. So if you want to go to the next slide, here's our Community Impact Council. So this is one of the first things that we did in this journey is we brought in the experts. So this Community Impact Council we've created is an advisory group to our board. And Beth Albert, Director of Human Services, is on it. Lisa Guyon from Cape Cod Healthcare. Peter Clark, former superintendent of schools in Falmouth. We've got Maureen O'Shea, who's Director of Research and Planning for the college, who brings this great knowledge of research and outcomes. Kathy Quattromini from the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office, because we wanted a law enforcement perspective. We're not completely appointed yet. The rest of these folks are our impact team chairs. So what we're doing is we're bringing that volunteer piece together with the experts so that they can inform and guide our work. So they came up with, so they're in charge of the impact teams now, of what's the process of what are we going to fund and monitoring what we're doing. So their first accomplishment was to create the results framework. So for those of you who were submitted a grant last year or partners, we shifted to these categories last year: health, education, financial stability, and housing. So what you see this year, and this should be in your packets, is that we're really creating a goal, an overarching goal, and then goals within each of these strategies. And you're going to see this even become more focused as we work on what are the community indicators we're trying to shift there. So we're actually looking at shifting the statistics and the data. So this is very clear when you go to write a grant proposal, and Beth will talk more about this. You need to look at, is the strategy outlined here? And if it isn't, then you probably don't fit. Now, and I say that with a caveat because there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of things happening. If you feel that strongly that it's really going to support that goal under that category, then you should have a conversation with us. So we're not trying to be too narrow, and we really want to encourage innovation, but we've also are taking the advice of these experts as to what do they know that works? What are evidence-based practices? Where should we invest? Okay, so and part of this also is really studying what are the trends in human services, the wraparound, caseworkers, co-location of services, all of that. So they've took this very seriously, and they spent a lot of time coming up with this. And obviously this will continue to be refined as we go forward. But I think they did a great job. And, we got here because they're really looking at how do we solve problems for the long term, because that's what we want to do. So the other document they came up with was our guiding principles. And these guiding principles are meant as their effort to how do we help our nonprofit community how do we help us all be better? So what are the kinds of values and principles that we should be aspiring to, and that we as the United Way should be leading? So this is what they came up with. And I think it's, when you read this, you see, we're really promoting that long-term piece of the puzzle. So I know you look at all this, and I think here's what I'm trying to accomplish, because I'm you, right? I've been grant writing for the last 25 years and raising money. So I know you're sitting there thinking, can you just give us some money? We're doing really good work. Can you just fund the program? I mean, how hard does this have to be? I know, I'm you. See, I get it. So yes, we do want to fund your programs, but we also, our clients are our donors. And I think it's not just about that. I think it's about, what kind of community do we want to live in, and how hard, do we want to work harder, or do we want to work smarter? We want to work together. We want to really solve some problems. And part of what is layered in here is results-based accountability in a very kind of sly, quiet way, which is helping us all understand what are we doing, how well are we doing it, and is anyone better off? And if you can answer those questions, then you can report to the donor, and we know as a community, are we making a difference? So it's a journey that we're on. We don't have all the answers yet. We're going to make some mistakes along the way, and we're going to probably continue to evolve. But we're on a mission to really be the best partner that we can be for you. And so you look at the guiding principles and the results framework. I'm going to give you an example. Staff development, okay? And we all know that staff development is really important, but what board wants to pay for staff development? And what donor they don't want to hear about staff development, but we all know your staff can't do a good job. You get the frontline people working with clients can't do a good job, and you can't retain people here on the Cape unless you're really helping them build their expertise. So you're going to see staff development. You see it in the guiding principles. You see it in the results framework. So what that does is now here you got Barbara Milligan, grant writer and fundraiser, who's also over here at the table with the funders saying, oh, we fund staff development, don't you? Isn't it fantastic? Don't we all need to really support the staff at these nonprofits? And so let's get a conversation going about staff development and about overhead, and about some of these tough issues that people don't necessarily want to hear about, but that's what we live and breathe in the nonprofit sector. So I don't want you to see what we're doing here is it's not punitive. We're not trying to impose things on you. What we're trying to do is we're trying to be a better organization. We're trying to raise more money for you, and we're trying to make the community better by really leading, this work together. So that's where we are. I'm going to turn it over to Beth now, who can tell you some of the specifics you want to know about the process.
Okay. All right. Good morning. Thank you, Barbara. So like Barbara said, it's my role to kind of walk you through what our new grant cycle process is and talk with you more specifically about what that means. And then at the end, we'll have a time for kind of question and answer. And I'm gonna document all of the questions that are asked. The PowerPoint, along with our video, along with the frequently asked questions, will be on our website as soon as possible. Okay, so this first slide is really just a way to put some dates right in front of you that are very important very quickly. So LOI, letter of intent, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second, but that is due October 17th, okay? And we would prefer that to be electronically sent to my attention at my email in a PDF document, if possible. If you like using the U.S. Postal Service, feel free to do that as well, but we would encourage you to do it via email. So about 6 weeks after you submit your letter of intent, is the notification process. So on or around November 30th, you will receive a notification from us whether you've been invited to submit for a full grant application. So the grant application process then will be on our website on November 30th. You'll have the opportunity to look at that and then submit your grant by January 17th. Okay, so those are just a couple of dates I wanted to put in front of you. Okay. So like Barbara said, we've done a bunch of new things, one of which is this letter of intent. And so what we heard from folks and what we know is that putting together a full grant application process can be a very arduous task. So we wanted to make sure that folks had an opportunity to let us know that they were interested in the funding, but not have to do that full grant application package. So this is what we came up with. It's a letter of intent. And so you'll hear me say this a couple of times. The goal is brevity. So you want to be clear, concise, 2-page max. So you're going to give us the information that we're asked for very clearly, very concisely, and very briefly. Okay? So basically what we've asked for is outlined in the funding announcement that you probably saw either via the press release or via an email. You also have the funding announcement and the scoring rubric in your packet in front of you. So what you'll see is that we're asking you to describe the agency, the program goals, who you're going to serve, what the budget is, and a justification for the budget. Again, very briefly, you're going to have an opportunity to dig a little deeper in all of those areas in the full grant application. The other thing that's new for us is the scoring rubric. So essentially, as Barbara said, what used to happen is we had a team of volunteers. They would look at the grants that were in front of them, make a decision. So we thought it would be good to give them a rubric that then outlines for them how they're going to make those scoring decisions, so that we're encouraging consistency and uniformity between all of the different review teams. So that is new. That's also in your packet. And finally, because this is a new process for us and for some of you, what we've decided to do is do a sample letter of intent, which I'm working on currently, and should be posted by the end of the week. So that's just a way for you guys to get a very broad sense about what we're looking for. Okay, so a little more about the process. So we've talked about the letter of intent, when that's due. We've talked about the grant application, when that'll be available, when that's due. So let's say you've moved through that process. You've been invited to submit a full grant application. You've then submitted that by January 17th. Here's what happens next. So those full grant applications go to the impact teams. So there's 4 of those aligned with the 4 areas in the results framework. Those folks have a chair and then a team of volunteers that will review the applications. Those teams will then use the scoring rubric for the full grant application. They will make those decisions. They will score them. They will make some recommendations via their chair of their team to the Community Impact Council that Barbara talked about. Those folks, again, are kind of our local experts. They also have a broad view. So they'll take a look at the recommendations from the impact teams, and then they'll make some decisions, and then they'll present their final recommendations to the board of directors. It's the board of the directors that really makes the final funding decisions. And we anticipate that they'll do that in mid-April or so, which then means that you'll be notified shortly thereafter, and there's a grant reception that we hold every year in the middle of May for those folks who have been accepted. Okay. All right, so just a couple of quick reminders. We start this process now because our grant cycle is on a state fiscal year. So that's July 1st to June 30th. Within that grant cycle period, we're going to ask you to do a couple of things as a partner with us. We're going to ask you to have a site visit, and there's a site visit questionnaire that comes to you ahead of time. If you're currently a partner with us, you may have seen that form recently. Those site visits happen about 3 to 4 months, about this time, after the start of the grant cycle. We're also going to ask you to submit a final report about 3 months after the close of the grant cycle. So it happens about September 1st or so, give or take. So those are the things. We're also going to ask you as a good partner that if things come up during the grant cycle that maybe you didn't anticipate, something changes, you said you thought you were going to meet this goal, doesn't look like that's going to happen, have a conversation with us sooner rather than later so we can be part of the solution. So I also just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on what's coming down the pike. So we are currently in development for an online grants management process. So I'm very happy about that as well. So what that essentially means is that you'll be able to go into your own computer. It'll be web-based. You'll be able to upload documents. You'll be able to input information specific to your grant request or your site visit or your final report. The goal really is to make it easier for you as the applicant so that all your information is there in one place, so that you're not searching around for a particular document every time. It's there in your account in the online grants management system. That's unlikely that will happen. Well, it might happen this year. But yeah. But it will happen when Barbara wants it to happen, so that's probably a good way to say it. But don't worry, we are committed to providing some training, technical assistance. We're all going to go through this together, so we'll be kind of partners in our learning about what the grants management system looks like.
So thank you for the great work you do.